Hey everybody, welcome to OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. We have a great guest and a great episode in store for you this week on OHKO. I'm your host, Joe Brown, joined with the still frame version of Sierra, the Slither Dawn. I don't even know what we call her here, as fortunately having some camera issues for Sierra here, but we do have the Louisville Regional Champion, Andrew Zheng. So we'll start with you, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us here on OHKO. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Been pretty busy day, so this is kind of just a chill way to end the day. Pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited to have you here. Now let's go back to the Slitherwing herself and Sierra. You were doing great until a couple minutes ago. Something maybe a button's pressed here or there, and now you're Slitherwing. So how are you doing now?
So I just recently got a new desk, and I already was bad with the wire management, and I got this new desk, and I didn't have time to fix all of the wires because I had to be on broadcast, and everything worked, so I thought that it was fine, and all of a sudden today, my camera will not work, and I do not understand why. And I think it's with the absolute cluster mess of wires, especially with my cats loving to hang out in the wires, but I've checked all of the wires. I have restarted my computer. Something ain't working. I don't know. So you get this beautiful picture of Slitherwing. This is the Hawaii Slitherwing that I made when I found Hourglass World. So yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know. But Andrew, you were talking about how it's been a busy day and now you get to chill a little bit. I have a couple of quick rapid fire questions I want to ask you right off the rip. Anything but chill. Just as a little kind of a quick get to know you, get warmed up for the episode type thing. So first off, real hard hitting question. What's your favorite Pokemon?
I would say Garchomp, and not just because of Louisville.
We do love Garchomp over here.
This is a pro Garchomp podcast. You don't have to worry, Andrew. I also bought a Garchomp little figurine thing at Comic-Con last weekend, where I still have to put the pieces together and put it on my desk. But it's kind of like Legos, but not at the same time. So it's kind of we like Garchomp here. It's a good answer. Good answer.
All right. Next hardball question. Favorite Pokemon game?
The only Pokemon game I've actually played is Scarlet, so I'm gonna have to say Scarlet.
By default, Andrew, where you been? You missed you weren't playing Pokemon when you were 6 years old, or what were you doing back then?
So growing up in juniors and seniors, I actually played mostly TCG. It wasn't until COVID that I actually started playing Pokemon games, and that's how I got into VGC in general, was playing Scarlet.
Oh, interesting. What were some of your old favorite TCG decks you used to play?
My first ever deck is the deck that won the 2015 World Championships, and which is actually my Discord and Twitter handle. It's called Honor Stoys. It's just Blastoise, Rain Dance, whatever the ability was called back then. You just attach a bunch of water energies and you blow things up. Pretty simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the quickest World's Finals, Masters Finals of all time. I remember watching that in the crowd in Boston. That's a fun deck to choose. Do we have any more rapid fire, Sierra?
Yes. So this one was actually our question of the week last week, but I really liked it, so I'm bringing it back for our rapid fire question. So you already said that your favorite Pokemon is Garchomp. Great answer. But I want to know, if you were a Pokemon trainer, what would be your ace Pokemon, and what Pokemon would be your little guy? Some people have a Pokemon that just hangs out with them. It doesn't really battle. You got Misty and the Togepi, you got Dawn and the Piplup. What little Pokemon do you just hang around with because it's just a cool little guy?
Even though this isn't really a cool little guy, I would say Fluttermane, because I just love the animation so much of it floating around and being a menace inside the game. And for my ace, I would say Ting-Lu. I just love that Pokemon so much. It's so goofy.
Oh, that's a cool ace. Imagine rolling up to Andrew's like gym leader battle, and he throws out Ting-Lu out there on you and hits a fissure. Oh my god.
I was expecting Joe Brown to comment about the Fluttermane, because when I answered this question last week, I said Slitherwing would be my little guy Pokemon, you know, like I'm not envisioning battle with them. Like, you know how Slitherwing is in VGC, not necessarily the top dog of Paradox Pokemon. And Joe Brown made fun of me for it. He said it was an unacceptable answer.
Well, here's the thing. Andrew's a guest, okay? Andrew's allowed as a guest. He gets a little more wiggle room than Sierra does, in my opinion. I was also waiting for the Discord to flood Sierra with comments agreeing with me that Slitherwing is in fact not a little guy that could be your small friend, because it's like 6 feet tall. It's basically in the NBA out here, and nobody said anything in Discord. So I was like, whatever. I give up. I guess I'll have to take the L on this one.
Because being a little guy is a state of mind. It's a state of mind. He's just a little dude. He wants to hang out. But
the little guy until 252 Specs Moonblast.
There you go. Yeah.
Unreal. Your little guy could beat up my little guy. This is unreal. All right. So diving into talking about you, Andrew. I mean, normally we like take the rapid fire questions, we put it aside, and we keep moving on. But originally, I wanted to talk about your history with Pokemon, and the fact that Pokemon Scarlet is your first game, like in terms of like Pokemon video games, I just think is fascinating. So talking about that journey for TCG into VGC, I want to know more like about it, like when you swapped over, why you swapped over. Is it something that you dabbled in VGC for a little bit and then dove in for it? Like, what was the change up?
So I think I first got into VGC because of Wolf's YouTube channel. Just like I was playing TCG for so long, it was just like something new that I thought was fun. And I think I binged through literally all of his Road to Number 1 videos in Sword and Shield. And because of that, when Scarlet and Violet came out, it was like the perfect time for me to finally get into a new Pokemon game and get into VGC.
Never forget Wolf's Road to Number 1 Leafeon video. I always go back to
6-hour Glaceon special.
Yeah, oh my gosh, so silly, all those videos that he had. But I think that's pretty cool that you're able to transition from, one Pokemon game to another. And I guess my first thought was that since you don't have as much, history with the game, like you're kind of pretty consistent from the beginning here. Like when you face off against a quote unquote notable player or top player, like do you not feel as nervous because you don't have the historical, like you haven't been watching this player for 12 years winning regionals, or do you still feel nervous when you're facing off against like a top tier player?
I'd say the nerves are definitely still there. But Louisville, I think it's a misconception that I'm kind of new to VGC, because even though it's technically my second season, Louisville was actually my 8th VGC event. It is true that my breakout performance, Orlando, pretty much came out of nowhere, because before then, I pretty much had 0 results. But it still was a long journey, and I think that helped me be able to be less nervous when the time actually came, when I had the opportunity to make it in day 2 and play for games and cut. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you put in the work, the results will come.
I love that, especially you're the living embodiment of that. The people that we've been able to see have the breakout performances too. I want to know then the work that you've put into it behind the scenes, because Wolf is great content, don't get me wrong, but going from watching a Leafeon Glaceon video on ranked. I mean, you're not winning the regional with Leafeon or Glaceon, as great of a player as
Fair
Wolf
enough.
is. So, like, where was it that you started your VGC like playing journey? Was it just like I'm testing things out? Like, how did you get involved to really start figuring out, like, hey, I'm actually really good at this and be able to improve in such a time span?
So most of my testing is definitely on Showdown. That's definitely where I did my most growth, but also just meeting new people, being able to exchange information. Last year, I played in a draft league, and that definitely made my gameplay from like super terrible to like I'd say above average. And I think it's pretty cool that OTS and just the growth of the game in general means that there's a lot more information for people to try to get better at the game and get the results that they want.
See, we're kind of on the same wavelength here, Andrew, because I was literally about to ask on top of Showdown, like, have you played in any draft leagues, or have you played for other type of non-official VGC events? Because we kind of have like a chain of guests the last couple of episodes of the podcast that we've done that like. They got a lot of their experience early on, either in Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet, and a lot of that like step up for them was playing in a draft league. So this is like you're the third or fourth person that's mentioned draft leagues in VGC. Like, can you explain to our audience like what skills that you can learn from playing in a draft league that has helped you transfer it over to official VGC events?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, in a draft league, instead of everyone being able to use the strongest Pokemon, you have to choose like Pokemon different tiers to use and try to use them to create the best team. And you know what you have access to and what your opponent has access to. So managing resources and playing from both ahead and behind are like key skills that you're able to learn. And I think that's like the main value of a draft league.
I don't know then, like talking about the draft league, like what was like your best, like every draft, like no draft is quite equal, and there's always like a Pokemon you kind of rely on a little bit more. Like back in my draft league, there was a couple of different Pokemon that we went to. I had like my two best, my Cinderace and my Dracozolt. My Cinderace especially, but the Dracozolt is the one I look back and that was like some of the most memorable battles. So like talking about that draft league journey, like is there any like particular moment from the draft league, a Pokemon that you're like, oh hell yeah, like this Pokemon carried me?
Yeah, for a draft, definitely.
Really?
There's just so many different things that Mon can do. Like, I've seen, like, I don't play singles, but I've seen people take VGC sets and use them in, like, singles, and I've also seen the other way around. There's so many things it can do. It's so versatile.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because it doesn't matter how powerfully the Pokemon that has the priority attack is, because like just priority is inherently valuable, whether it's on like a S tier Pokemon, right, with Aqua Jet, or like a C tier Pokemon with Aqua Jet. It still is a value that Farigiraf is going to be able to negate regardless of the opponent's power. And I think that's one thing, because I've also played in a lot of draft leagues that like, especially because as you mentioned, that like what you have and what your opponent has, that in theory there is only so much. So it's like whether your opponent has Urshifu and it's like, okay, this is my one Urshifu answer, I can't let it go down in this matchup. Or if your opponent has like Machamp, right? Like you still, okay, well, this is my Machamp answer, I can't let it go down in this matchup. I think it does teach, like, it's probably very helpful, especially for a newer player to have that experience and like learning those core aspects or core elements of VGC, even with lesser valued or lesser appreciated Pokemon.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk about the regional championships and looking back at Louisville. So like Going into this now, for someone who's still relatively like newer to the VGC side of things, like you're on that list of regional champions. Is that sunk in now? Like, how do you feel now that we're a couple weeks out of that event?
Yeah, it's definitely sunk in now, and I think the best part of it is if I don't want to, I don't have to play in any GCs at all. Just putting 4 hours on a weekend, the best of one, is not how I want to be using a weekend. Yeah. But yeah, on the other side of things, I think it's emotionally, it's definitely pretty cool to be on the list of regional champions, because winning event is like really hard, no matter how you look at it. And for a lot of people, it's something like, for a lot of regional champions, they might have like worked on it for years or maybe even a decade. And I guess selfishly, having that on my belt in my like second or third year means that I can have more fun with the game now. I can just be a lot less nervous going into future events and really try to be on my A game.
I would imagine that like future events this season for you should be pretty fun. You know, in general, playing Pokemon is fun, but there's obviously so much stress in those winning in rounds, and oh, what if I get crit, and oh, what if I miss? Like, where you still clearly want to perform well. So whichever regional you're going to go to next, you're going to put your best forward and try to get the back to back or something. But like, there's probably solace knowing that, like, okay, if I do a weird team building decision here, or if I make a misplay here, or if I go for a hard read and it doesn't work out, like, at least I still have the fallback that I'm already qualified for Worlds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Louisville was actually the first event where my team passed the Riley Factura test, and
nice.
Playing 16 rounds, knowing that you can't miss a move, like, now I understand why Riley like does this every tournament. It just like alleviates so much stress.
The Riley Factura method. It's moving on. It's spreading. But
that's so good.
I mean, being able to get that sort of stress alleviated in a tournament is fantastic. Especially too, you had a crazy run. So you're talking about your introduction to VGC being Wolf and his videos and stuff, and we got to see you play up against him in, I think, the longest stream set we had all weekend in your top 8 match. So I want to know how you felt going into that. Is that the first time you've gotten to face off against Wolf? Like, were you nervous then?
It was actually, that was my second time facing Wolf. We faced in Orlando, and I think that set was also an hour, and I won off a game. I won very fraudulently off a game 3 50-50. So going into Louisville, I definitely still knew that anytime anyone faces Wolf, it's going to be like super tough. And I knew my strategy had to be to try to make the games as long as possible, because for a shortened game, I think Wolf is like, specifically his team is like very offensive, has lots of threats, and if I make the game too short, then it can be very hard for me.
Yeah, as the commentator that was casting that 58-minute set between you and Wolf, I think it was very dramatic, but oh man, some of those turns took I think we saw like 2 minutes left in like every single game. It took absolutely forever, which just shows how important these decisions were.
I think
but like
all 6 of my games versus Wolf, like every game was taken at least 15 minutes. It's like pretty crazy.
Well, so he had the Yon Mega team, and everyone's going crazy over Yon Mega, and seeing it as a meta counter and everything like that. Like, before this tournament or before facing Wolf, had you had any experience facing Yon Megas on the ladder? Like, what was the strategy going into team preview against such an odd team with like Yon Mega and like Terra Electric Stalwart on Archaeodon instead of the Stamina, maybe like Terra Fairy or Terra Grass version or something like. So this was like, not only is it a great player that you're facing in Wolf, but like he's also using some unconventional strategies.
Yeah, before the tournament, that team definitely got copied and passed around the ladder a bunch, but I definitely remember that no matter who was playing the team, I still ended up losing a lot of the time. So facing that in cut was like pretty intimidating, and I'm glad I was able to figure it out the matchup when it really mattered, because how many of that team were in day 2? It was like 4 or 5, maybe even 6. And I thought I got pretty lucky to dodge that until cut, but obviously Wolf is probably the best user of that team, and I'm just glad I was able to put out in the end.
I mean, then talking about that match, especially the history, the fact that like every single one of the matches took 1.5 million years is hilarious. I want to know then too, you had quite a few difficult matchups. What one you were kind of like the most nervous about? Was it finals just because it was finals? Was it the Wolf match? Was there a match in your regular playing that was particularly stressful? Or what do you think was like the hardest point of the weekend for you?
I think a few of the rounds I want to highlight are, well, first of all, finals. That was definitely probably my worst matchup all week, but I think facing Joe was still better than facing Riley, because Riley was pretty much an auto loss. He could literally just leave Pelipper and whatever and pretty much just solo my team. But I knew after top 8 happened, I knew that if I won top 4, I would be facing a bad matchup in the finals. And as you saw in game 1 and game 2, because of such a bad matchup, I had to make like really sharp plays in order to just have a chance in the game. And other than finals, there were some of my day 1 rounds with like Mouse Ape and Gargoyle's King Gambit were pretty tough matchups.
Now, we do have to talk about this finals match because it was very intense back and forth against Joe Garte, and he's definitely if you're playing long drawn out games against Wolf, Joe is speed running his matchups in his games. They know, right? Literally we saw you forfeit turn 1 after essentially in game 2, right? And so like that's how fast those matches and volatile they are. So when you're playing against a player like Joe who has those over aggressive tendencies, and he'll go for hard reads, and he's got these hyper offensive Pokemon in his end, are you trying to match his pace and be like, well, if he's going to go for broke, then I also have to go for broke? Or are you trying to like slow it down and force him to play an uncomfortable play style?
Yeah. After seeing a set against Riley and him literally getting like, I think every single turn right, I definitely knew that if I let him get comfortable and put his foot on the gas pedal, since the matchup was not in my favor, I could get completely blown out of the water. So knowing that, I had to not let him get comfortable. And I think it got reflected in game 3, where compared to the other 2 games, I made pretty much every safe play, but he didn't really punish that because I played so risky the previous 2 games.
I want to talk about that playing risky too, because obviously we look at different players and their play styles, and we talk about those tendencies to be able to make these big plays and stuff. And obviously, like as a player, like I watched your matches back and I looked at all this, and even if I'm not quite as familiar, you didn't strike me as, oh, like these big risky plays, these big turn ones. Like it seemed a bit more safe, which is also a great play style too. Then we get into the finals and we see turn one, like close combat into the Terra Dark jump bluff. Like game two, we see the attempt at a fake out into what you thought was going to be a Terraslized Pokemon into then all of a sudden, like, is this something that you maybe do like sometimes in your other games that we just don't necessarily get to see because we haven't seen as much as you? Or is this kind of like a, all right, like I'm playing right up against this player to like make sure like I can counter the player, not necessarily the team?
Overall, that finals, I definitely played a lot more riskier than I usually do, knowing, once again, the matchup and the player. I think you did see in top 8 and top 4, I definitely played a lot safer, but I think one of my strengths as a player is knowing when you have to take the risks to succeed, especially in like when you're facing good players. Fun fact, my win rate in day 2 and cut is actually higher than my day 1 win rate, and I attribute that to having kind of an inconsistent play style that can pay off against better players. In a lot of my events, I have a trend of either just whiffing day 2 completely, but if I make day 2, usually I will do well. And that's definitely because when you play against a better player, if you make all the safe plays, you're going to get super punished because good players know when to punish you making safe plays.
I love that. I like that you're like a basketball player who performs better in the playoffs. You know, last 2 minutes of the game, give Andrew the ball. You know, first quarter, he might just airball his 3-pointers, but when it counts, you're gonna get the win. That's actually really hard to pull off that percentage too, right? If you think about it, having the higher day 2 win percentage than day 1, but I think over time that's going to change. You're going to consistently, you're going to start top in every
It's definitely
event,
something
right?
I have to work on because there's like players like Wolf and Riley who are able to be consistent in day 1, day 2, and cut, and that's just something I'm trying to work towards. I'm not saying I'm good in day 2 and cut just to say it. I'm just like recognizing that it's something that's my strength, but also something that I could be working on for the future.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. It's like, imagine, how great you're performing now. Imagine how the higher you can achieve when you improve your game overall and not just, being a day 2 minutes, like being a day 1 consistent player as well. But I want to talk about the close combat into the Terra Dark on Jump Bluff, because I remember I was casting it and, Len and I were popping off, and then it's like, oh my God, it was a flying type. He called the Terra Dark, went close combat and 1-shots the Jump Bluff, and then Joe's just in like an absolutely terrible position afterwards. So what was your mindset on that turn, like game 1, turn 1 to close combat a flying type? And then it obviously worked out.
Yeah, so before the match, I knew that Jump Bluff, if I let it get off 2 actions, I'd probably be losing most of the time. So before the match, I was thinking he's either going to Terra or search the Gambit. But in that moment, I actually completely forgot about like any thoughts beforehand. I just like panicked. I clicked Ice Beam and Close Combat, and I hoped the right move would connect, and it worked out. But I think there was something in the back of my mind saying, you should probably do this.
I mean, first off, the turn 1 of the game 1 was crazy. I want to talk about the game 2, though, because when we're looking at finals matches, that's probably one of the fastest matches that we've got to see, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons for yourself. Because we see the attempt, I mean, obviously, when we see Joe's team, we see this Zoomian Typhlosion, being able to go for this Terrifier, like Eruption, crazy. And it looks like you try and call the Terastallization, you go for the fake out, nothing happens, and you just like forfeit. I mean, is that just like an I'm up a game? Is that just like the gut feeling you had? Because the forfeit on turn to like a gameplay move that you forfeit on turn 2 in the grand finals of a regional, it worked out in the end. You still won, but like it seems crazy.
Yeah, that was just purely to like from that position. There's like pretty much a 0% chance I win. I just did not want to reveal my 4th Pokemon, and also, I thought that Joe might be a little bit thrown off if he just went immediately from a game 2 from a game 3. He probably wasn't, because that game 3 he's definitely still made a ton of good plays, but it's just more, I think, not trying to salvage a game I can't win and preserving information.
Okay, that's interesting, because like I have had this conversation with people, and it's something that I bring up on the broadcast a lot. Like, it's like, oh, if player X can win this game without revealing their 4th Pokemon, that's an even bigger win, right? Because then their opponent got even less information available for the rest of the set. And then I've had conversations with people that say like, oh, well, not revealing the 4th Pokemon is not that big of a deal, because people can see and people can just guess and think what they think that Pokemon is. But I like that you're in the same camp here, that like, even if it is only a slight amount of information, right? Or even if you think Joe is only going to be slightly kind of like off, caught off guard by you forfeiting so quickly, like all those little percentages, they can add up into your favor for information.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted them like going back to the turn 1. So like the turn 2, the forfeit makes sense. I want to know behind the fake out on the turn 1 that put you in the unwinnable position. Was it like if I just get this call right, I win the game and I have a game to spare? Did you think that you were in like a bad position, that you had like, you were just like, regardless or not, like you were just kind of in a bad position? Like that turn 1 with the fake out, I want to know what's kind of like was going through your head in that very moment.
I think both game 1 and game 2, me and Joe each immediately lost the game for overthinking. And I was just like, since my spreads were just super different, I was kind of at an information disadvantage that game 2, because I didn't know how fast the Kingambit was and whether Terrify Eruption would kill my Porygon. And looking back, it was probably fine for me to just fake out the Kingambit, but since I was kind of spooked by not having information, I went for a play where I overthought the turn and got punished for it.
Now, if we do expand on your whole, your team as a whole, the matchup in the whole, Louisville as a whole, looking at it, obviously you have the great Garchomp. Garchomp's risen in popularity. Porygon 2 is super, super popular, even on a not fully conventional Trick Room team. You have a lot of fast Pokemon and still have a Porygon here. The typical Amoonguss Incineroar duo that's on a lot of championship level teams, and then of course Sneasler, the number 1 Pokemon in the format. The one Pokemon I have not mentioned so far, Andrew, is the Golden Go, and I think that's what I want to ask you about. As Golden Go was on 38% of day 2 teams, I want to say, no, 36%, excuse me, 36% of day 2 teams, and you were the only Golden Go in top 8. So what, I guess, in a twofold question, what makes Golden Go so strong that it's so highly prevalent within the metagame, especially for the top players and the day 2 percentage, but then also like what makes it so volatile that it had such a rough conversion rate from the overall field to the cut?
Yeah. Goldengo, its main strength is being a setup Pokemon that does a lot of damage and is immune to Spore. And Mega Rain's broken, the ability is broken, and there's just a lot of options you can put on it. Overall, I think in this tournament, the strength of what I ran is a bulky Goldingo with pretty much no speed investment. Most other people that ran Goldingo were scared of facing another Goldingo and being slower than it. So they ran like max speed, max special attack. And I just think Goldingo's its stats are way too good to be running like a spread like that, where you basically waste like more than half of the points you can have on speed. I just went full into bulk and committed to playing better in the Goldingo meet. And I think that's what allowed me to take Goldingo so far.
I'm just curious with this team going so far, because going back to something you said about your matchup with Riley, that you didn't feel great about like your matchup into Riley if you did end up having to face him, because the Pelipper just caused issues for you. And when we look back to this regulation, Pelipper was one of the first Pokemon people were talking about, especially with this Archaludon. And even if it didn't have the best pop-off performance here in day 2, it is still a Pokemon that going into a tournament, I feel like you have to have a decent amount of respect for. So did he feel like Pelipper was going to fall off enough? Did he feel like you could just outplay? Like, why? Like, it worked for you, don't get me wrong, but bringing a team that's weak to Pelipper?
Yeah. So the Pelipers I was expecting to run into were Sash and not Cloak. And Sash, you can just fake out and then force them to Terra Ghost. And if they want to kill your Incineroar, they have to burn their Terra, which I was fine with. But Cloak, as well as Basculegion and Terra Ghost Amoonguss, is just 3 things on that team which I can't fake out. And just losing tempo in that matchup is really bad when you're facing Rain, when everything does so much damage.
It's fair.
Yeah, I can see. You see, and the Pelipper is, I think weather as a whole is like kind of really strong, right? We've now after Lille seen all 4 weathers performing at a very high rate so far. But I think one thing I'm questioning your thoughts on Sneasler and your team. We don't have to get into the whole online discourse about Sneasler, just particularly with your Sneasler and how it works. You have Terra Flying and Poison Touch, and you have coaching instead of Fake Out. Like as I mentioned, there's a Fake Out version, there's a Stellar Terra version, there's a Terra Dark version that people like. There's White Herb and Unburden instead of Poison Touch. Like for such a just like simple, like super fast and hit hard Pokemon, I feel like that there is a lot of complexity in how you build it, particularly for your team. So like, do you, going through Louisville and having all your rounds, like, do you think you settled on the quote unquote best Sneasler set, or like would you be willing to, if you play a Sneasler team in the future, like starting from square one and going like Stellar Terra plus Fake Out, or are you set on this type of coaching option?
Yeah. Overall, I think the best set is Fake Out plus coaching and your 2 attacks. Because with this set, since I don't have Fake Out, a lot of times you can be put at a disadvantage turn 1. Fake Out, along with coaching, allows you to, like, whether if your opponent plays passively in front of Fake Out, you can coaching, and vice versa. On this specific team, the role of the Sneasler is literally just to click the attacks, really, and coaching if you're in a good position. I think Close Combat was definitely my most click move, because this team overall is pretty bad into Dark types, and for Porygon, without Sneasler, you're forced to run Terra Poison or Terra Fighting, and if you have the Sneasler, you have those 2 types of moves, so you can just run another type that, like, I know I ran Ground. There's a lot of stuff you can run, but it just gives you more flexibility. I think Caesar's really good right now because of its versatility, and its strength. It's not even completely because of Dire Claw. Dire Claw just pushes it completely over the top, but even without it, I think it would still be pretty strong.
And yeah, like conversation about Sneasler that I've been seeing, like besides all of the toxic stuff, but if we go another episode hating on Sneasler, people are gonna unsubscribe. So
I said
I would take a break this week. But so there has been conversations too. Obviously, once I believe like after Toronto, once we get to January, that we're going back to past regulation, where Sneasler wasn't really anything that we talked about, right? And there's the conversations that Sneasler is going to still be around, and that not because it got better or like anything, but because nobody really realized its strength, and now people can team build properly with the restricted mind with Sneasler. And I want to know if you think too, if Sneasler is just like a right here, right now Pokemon, or once we do go back to regulation G. We're too far in the alphabet, guys. We're too far in the alphabet. But once we go back to regulation G, if you still think Sneasler is going to be just as strong of a Pokemon, just like seen in a different form.
I don't think so, because Urshifu, like both forms are just, in my opinion, way better. If you run Sneasler, it means you can't run Urshifu really. And Sneasler also just drops the Surging Strikes. And Scarf Urshifu at one point was like way above 30%, if I remember correctly. And if you run a Sneasler into like that metagame, I feel like it's just not going to be as good. But maybe I'll be wrong. Someone will probably cook.
Also, if you think about it, Andrew's little buddy Fluttermane truly does not care about close combat and Dire Claw, right? As long as it doesn't terastallize as a ghost and fairy type Pokemon. So I think I think maybe there'll be some changes, but like from what I remember, people were trying to make Sneasler work. Like that was like one of those big YouTube bait thumbnail Pokemons in Reg G, with like all grassy terrain and unburden, and like so maybe this time around and you just give it Electric Seed and put it on a Miraidon team, and all right, if my opponent is Terra Fairy Miraidon, then I just Dire Claw into it. But I wouldn't anticipate it to like go up to even higher, or like to the levels of like, let's say like, I don't know, 10%. I don't even think it would reach 10%. I could be wrong, but
I don't know, man. I don't have much to say here because I like I said, I'm taking a week off.
We're nice this week. We're nice to Sneasler this week, Sierra.
If you have nothing to say, don't say nothing nice to say. Don't say anything at all.
Okay, I have a question. You're Porygon, Terra Ground. So you said if you didn't have Sneasler, you'd have to be Terra Poison and all this stuff. How often did the Terra Ground work out? I know you did Terrasilize, we saw it on stream, but like, is that for the big three steals? Is that for like the Electabuzzes out there? Like, what's the main goal of Terra Ground on Porygon?
The goal is to have ice ground coverage, which is pretty much almost perfect, and also for the Goldango mirror. Like I said, my Goldango is like pretty much minimum speed, which means that other Goldangos can just outspeed it and kill it with Shadow Ball. So if I didn't have Terra Ground and Porygon, I just can't deal with. It's just another option to deal with Goldango, basically. And also switching to Shadow Ball if they do decide to go for that.
Okay, well, we talked being able to win this. You now don't have to worry about best of one events at your locals. I want to know what for the rest of the season now that you have your Worlds invite, is there still going to be like regionals or an ICU attend to just try and like get some more, earn a second, third invite, get some money? Or like, what do your plans look like for the rest of the year?
So because of my schedule, I can't really go to anything until San Antonio, but I do plan on going to more events in 2025. I might also play some TCG as well. We'll see. But yeah, that's my plan, is to see what events get put on the schedule and play whatever format I like, whether that be VGC or TCG.
I love that. Hey, I got my Charizard deck at me or with me at every regional I go to. Maybe we join some side events. Maybe we'll figure it out. But I know we're running close on time here. We want to respect your time, but I do want to get your information or your thoughts, your opinions on Lille a little bit. We'll talk more about it in the second half of the episode. But since we have a regional champion on the show, I want to get your thoughts on the metagame. Nils Dunlop winning the championship, the Tyranitar Corviknight team. All this interesting stuff. Sneasler being 51% usage on day 2 in Lille. Like, what are your overall thoughts for how the Lille Championships played out this weekend in EU?
Overall, I think a lot of the teams were pretty much already known, with definitely a lot more exceptions than I would expect at a European regional. The first place team is definitely, I would say, a classic Nils style team where it's a lot of strong Pokemon, but not ones that people would expect. And he definitely does do that a lot, where he shows up with these wacky teams, but is still able to do well. And for the rest of the teams, there's an Executor in top 8 again. Did not expect me to be able to see 2 Executors and cut in any format, to be honest, but pretty nice to see that doing well. And yeah, everything else just seems like balance, pretty much standard for EU, I would say.
There was the crazy round 8, Boyd versus Luigi to Filippo T, where it was the Crocodile, the Tentacruel, the Avalugg.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Yeah, Boyd got outboyded in that matchup. There's also the the third event in a row that Gabrielle / Chua's Ninetales Double Dragon team making it to the very far. Like, what are your thoughts on that core in this format?
Yeah, for that team, I just think it's a team, if you're really good at the game, it's something you can beat anything with. It's just really solid. Has a matchup and everything. I think everything, most teams, you're going to have 50-50 matchup into, and you're just betting on yourself to play better. And the people that are running that team are definitely very good at the game. So it has that going for them. And going back to the Avalugg team, even though people are saying it's bad on Twitter and stuff, I will say the Friday before Louisville, my last showdown game, I faced an Avalugg and I lost. So so I can't really talk shit about that.
Okay.
You gotta respect it. That's so funny. It's still the craziest team I think I've seen in a hot second. But we are getting to the point of I don't want to overstay the time. Since I said you knew that you did have to wrap things up. Before you go, of course, for anyone listening, I want to make sure that you have a chance to shout out your platforms, where people can find you if they want to keep up with you and your journey this season and everything.
Yeah, I think publicly my only platform would be Twitter, which is Otterstoys. That's my handle. I haven't really thought about anything else as far as content creation and any other public stuff goes. I'm just kind of taking this one day at a time and hoping it goes well. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and I hope the rest of the episode goes well.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us. As for us, quick tiny little break, and then we'll be back to talk a bit more about the Lille Regional Championships.
And we are back to continue this episode of OHKO, talking about the Lille Regional Championships taking place in France this past weekend. Sierra speaks French, so feel like you were pretty excited about this event, you know?
Oh, my French is so rusty. So rusty. I don't know if you can put that on me. There's been so many times where I've been in an event and someone has mentioned that I speak French, and then someone's like, oh, and I'm like, no. Do not make me speak. Please do not make me speak it. This isn't gonna go well. So yeah, that's my plea right now. Like, please no.
I would just believe you. Start even if it sounded bad, like I'd believe you. I don't know French. I would do. Oh, yep, she's crushing it right now. You know.
It's so good. Yeah, no. It's been a bit. I just don't want to.
All right, well, someone who had the best time in France this weekend was the regional champion, Nils Dunlop, last year's, or I guess, 2023 EUIC, no, 24, because Paul was 23, excuse me. So literally last year's EUIC champion. So Nils has been on quite a tear the last, year or so in VGC, winning with kind of a crazy team here, Sierra. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, like everyone tries to sound cool whenever a crazy team wins. Like, oh yeah, I can see. I know why that's good. I know Corviknight's good. Blah, 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 blah. But like Indeedee Mail, Excadrill T-Tar, Magmar over Electabuzz, Psychic Seed, Power Trip, Corviknight. Like, this team is cracked. Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I was prepared for this team. I was ready for it.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely some elements which, like, in this day and age, like, Corviknight's been kind of on the up and up. We got to see that at Louisville. We got to see it for a little bit. Where you're like, you should have a little bit of an idea about Corviknight. We've seen some more Indeedee Mail. We've had the conversation about Electabuzz versus the Magmar. Like, okay. So if someone's, like, talking about, like, those four Pokemon in general, or, like, those three, in general, I could be like, you know what? Yeah. The fact that after all this time, I don't feel, and like I could just be forgetting, I don't feel like I've seen a good Sand team since back in Sword and Shield Dynamax era, like Series 5, like in Series 6. Like, it has been so long since I feel like I've seen this particularly the Excadrill. We've seen some T-Tars by themselves. We got to see T-Tar win Sacramento or Peoria, one of the two last year.
Sacramento, yep.
Yeah. But we haven't seen like the two of them together. So for the duo's back, the dynamic duo. Like, this is the Sand duo. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing with Excadrill, because there was that hot second in Regulation A with Lycanroc, T-Tar, where you're just clicking double Rock Slide every turn and just trying to win through Rock Slide flinches. But no, Excadrill is like, that's the Sand sweeper that I think of, right? Like, if you ask me what's the Pokemon that you use to win with Sand, like throughout the history of VGC, I think it's Excadrill. It's a really strong Pokemon, and I'm happy to see it performing, well here. I think it's interesting too, because like pretty much for a lot of the time, Garchomp's the only ground type we get to see on stream. So like, it's nice to see Excadrill being another ground type. Of course, there's also Ursaluna. But like, I would imagine that he got a lot of value out of Excadrill this weekend. And on top of it, paired with Tyranitar, I want to talk about the whole team, but just Tyranitar specifically seems like he's in a really good spot right now, where it seems like the metagame is slowing down. Like, as our regional champion Andrew even mentioned, a lot of his Pokemon were trying to be slower and bulkier to win the mirror matches, and Tyranitar is really good into Ninetales inherently, which we saw in the finals, because you're it's ice type, so you're weak to Rock Slide, and you get rid of the 100% accurate Blizzards. It's also quote-unquote good into Pelipper if Pelipper only has Weather Ball, because then it doesn't have Hydro Pump to hit it, and you also hit it with Rock Slide. And then even though Torkoal is slower than Tyranitar, T-Tar is still good into Torkoal because of that Rock Slide. So it's pretty much like, of the four weather setters, its inherent value is better against the other three weather setters. It's the other Pokemon on the team that make T-Tar a little harder to pilot. But just in a weather war, I feel like Tyranitar comes out on top.
Yeah, it was cool, because when we've talked about the different weathers and stuff, obviously back to Andrew versus Joe in the finals, we've got to see that, Joe had sun. And then we look back at Joe's and Riley's match, it was the sun versus the rain. And we've gotten to see then this Ninetales Double Dragon team have a lot of success recently. So we've talked so much about every other weather, but never sand. So to see it's like it's comeuppance and be able to see it pop off in the way that it did is, I don't know, it's due time.
And it is like the one of the other benefits against Agati and Chua's Ninetales team is that like the Ninetales players that don't have Moonblast, because sometimes they run, like Scarf, Blizzard, Encore, and like another ice attacker or whatever, like then Tyranitar is genuinely unstoppable, right? Like if you don't have Moonblast on your Ninetales, then it's just taking those ice beams like it's nothing with the plus special defense as well as the assault vest. So really, really tanky, especially multiple flying terras. Was this 3 terra flyings on Nils' team to go along with Extra Jill's Earthquake, because Extra Jill does not have the Stomping Tantrum the way Garchomp does, so you're pretty much going to have to terrestrialize your teammates. So 3 flying terras and a Corviknight. And then let's talk about this Corviknight here, because like this was the talk of the town on social media. This steel bird was frozen in game 1 and game 3, and Nils still came out on top in the set. Like it was so funny seeing Corviknight just like dead face, like in the middle of the screen for like 7 turns in a row.
The frozen animation is so goofy. It is absolutely so goofy that like nothing happens. The Pokemon just freezes. And to see that coming out not once but twice from the Corviknight, oh my goodness. And there's always the conversation too. Okay, I said I wasn't gonna hate on Sneasler, but like I'm just to make this comment. Like people were like, I saw some comments about like, oh, like it wouldn't have been fair if Nils had lost after that. And it's like it's just the same as like Sneasler or any other like whatever. Put that aside. But yeah, to be able to come out on top despite all that, I think says a lot. And Corviknight as a Pokemon in general, man, that's Pokemon. It goes under the long list of Pokemon that if I use it, it feels bad if someone else uses it. Like it seems unstoppable, but wow, did it look obnoxious at times. Like it looks like he can do no wrong except for being frozen.
Bro, that's like the perfect. There's so many Pokemon that are in that category that like I watch Alberto or I watch Nils and I watch Len use Corviknight, and I'm like, they're getting so much more value out of this slow, no special defense Pokemon that I don't get. Like I always just die to overheat, or I just get outsped and like don't have anything going for my Corviknight, but they're able to like keep Corviknight on the field for 15 turns and quick bulk up and and roost and everything. But like this set is so interesting to me with the Corviknight Psychic Seed, right? So one of the things I mentioned, I have an issue with Corviknight, is that low special defense. It inherently has a really strong typing. It's only has a couple of weaknesses, and unfortunately for Corviknight, those are usually special attacking like Thunderbolt and Flamethrower or Overheat or whatever. So like you're hitting your bad stat, but Psychic Seed boosts your bad stat. You're not switching out because you're going to be clicking up Bulk Up and Roost and whatever for 5 turns straight. So like there's no reason for Protect because you're really strong defensively. And now after the Psychic Seed, and then the Psychic Seed gives you a boost, and it's like, hey, well, wait a second. Bulk Up gives me 2 boosts. Hey, wait, my Sneasler has Coaching, which also gives me 2 boosts. Throwing the Power Trip on this set was like just out of this world. If you can get a Corviknight to +6/+6, and then I guess +1 more because of the Psychic Seed, and then Power Trip, like I can't even remember the last time, like Marcus mentioned it on the broadcast. The last time was probably 2017 with Power Trip Crocodile on those Evolution or on those Bolivian Eevee teams. But like the last time I've seen Power Trip was when I Nuzlocked Sword and Shield, just like a general basic Nuzlock of Sword and Shield. And I just won because I did like Hone Claws Power Trip on my Corviknight. And I just like beat all of the gyms by boosting up with that. So I can't believe this Power Trip set won a regional.
I feel like the only time I've seen Power Trip is like on meme teams. Like,
Right.
that's we already talked about the YouTube thumbnail clickbait, and then all of a sudden it's this Pokemon, it gets 1.5 million boost, and you're like Power Trip because it doesn't actually have anything else of use because the Pokemon's inherently bad. But to see that as the move of choice, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, like considering how it's built out and everything. And I'm curious then if that's like gonna be more of just like a nil special, especially with this team, or if this is a team that kind of pushes the meta forward a little bit. Because not always when we see a team win a regional do we see people kind of adapt or anything to it? It's just kind of like, oh, here's that one done. Okay, like let's just kind of forget about it.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question if like this team will inspire people. I think it'll definitely inspire people to use Indeedee Mail more for sure, right? After this is 2 strong performances back-to-back weekends for Indeedee Mail on 2 different types of teams. And then maybe this will open their eyes up to a Tyranitar option for people, but like particularly the Corviknight is so tough to work with. Like as we said, it feels great when others use it and bad for us because like there are some matches that Corviknight feels like unplayable, and then sometimes it feels like the greatest option in the world, right? Like into opposing Sneaslers on the other end. So like I wonder how many times he did click Power Trip this weekend. You know what I mean? Over the course of all of the rounds of Swiss and into Top Cut and into the finals, like was the strategy only, you know, I don't know, maybe he clicked 4 or 5 times, or was it genuine? Like every time he brought Corviknight, he had to try to set it up to win.
I don't know, because I look at like the other parts of this team too, and it's such a nice swap and option. You don't even need to like really be able to like, oh, you need to set up. It seems like a checkmate. If you have it in this situation, you force your opponent more so to respond to it. But having such an aggressive mode with the Sneasler, the Excadrill, and the T-Tar, I feel like is really nice for this team. Because all of a sudden, if somebody tries to lead something that can get past this Excadrill and this T-Tar, and there's the Corviknight instead, well, that's not going to go well. But, like, you try and, like, be able to outpace this Corviknight, and there's this Excadrill in your face. I don't know. This seems super, just, like, strong in general.
There was literally one turn in game 3 where like so I couldn't remember if Heat Wave auto thaws or not, like because I know it's not every fire move that does it, right? And like I was sitting there, I was like, he should just Terra Water and Heat Wave his own Corviknight just to thaw from the blizzard. But like, I just couldn't remember if Heat Wave does or not. So obviously he doesn't go for it. He goes for the helping hand. Like that was funny too. Like you see the big hand surrounding Corviknight, and he's just like he's sitting there and just like stays frozen. And then in game 1 when he terrestrialized while frozen, like Corviknight's still able to do all like the animation and like gain a hat and go like rah, and just back to like still frozen like after terrestrializing too.
It's so goofy. It's so goofy. How do you feel just kind of about the teams from Lille in general? Like with the time zone, I didn't really get to tune in to as much of it I would like, but kind of looking back, it was, I think, really interesting to me. You obviously always for every single regional get to see some funky Pokemon, right? There's always something a little fun. Someone's trying to break a meta. But I think it was really interesting how many of these top players had something that was a little bit more out there. Like Edu, for example, had this Hizumian Samurott out of all things. And you're talking about Nils with the Sand team. Like there's some funky things happening over there.
Yeah, EU learned how to build after all the tweets, I guess. You know, all the shots fired online. EU said, okay, we'll show you, NA. We'll show you who can use these interesting teams here. But yeah, like Edu was my pick, right? Like going into Lille, and he got top 8. But like looking at this team, like the Samurott is cool because as a dark type and the boost of I'm pretty sure, so you have like Sucker Punch and Sharpness, Aqua Cutter as well, right? Sacred Sword also gets a Sharpness boost. That dark typing is probably really nice into Golden Go. The Sacred Sword for the Archaudon and for King Gambit. So like Samurott with Assault Vest seems like it's a really good, you know, anti-Big 3 Steel Pokemon here. But like looking at the other stuff on Edu's team, like it's Terra Fairy, Loaded Dice, Scale Shot, Dragonite on the squad. Like it just seems so cool that like the big thing I think also with Magmar this weekend has been Heat Wave development instead of Overheat, where I feel like the last couple of events we had in NA, a lot of people were running Overheat just as like a one-time nuke button on your Magmar that you didn't care about offensively anyway. So like you didn't care if your special attack was lowered by 2 stats, but like Edu had Heat Wave, Nils also had Heat Wave. Like I think that might be a good development for the meta because like that's a way to break Focus Ash or like, you know, KO Pokemon at 1 HP if they're already down to their sash, right? Instead of overheat, which you got to rely on it hitting for the first point, and you also have to rely on, lessen damage.
I mean, that's exactly it. I like the heat wave and the fact that it can kind of get around and follow me. You still offer some sort of pressure at any single point, and not just kind of like a one and done type move. So I think when you're looking at that sort of stuff, I think that's just kind of nice. And in other teams, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that, like, oh my goodness.
There's the Basculegion team. 3 of the top 9 is the same Archaludon, Pelipper, Basculegion.
Yeah. Basculegion feasting out there. I know we like half talked about this, but Executor of all things getting another top 8. Like, what?
Yeah, shouts to Mark Carter, the Irish players. They don't mess around. Those are my boys. I'm on Team Ireland, and they use some crazy teams out there, especially some hard trick room teams like Torkoal and Hatterene and Didi and stuff like that. Like, these are, I feel like, how to say this, the way you feel on Corviknight, right? It's like, it's great when others use it and terrible when I use it, is how I feel. Specifically, like, I like Psy Spam, but specifically the Hatterene version of Psy Spam, like, every time I've tried it, I just, like, I cannot make sense. I just, like, give me Armor Rouge back. I want that as my psychic type. Like, I don't care about this Hatterene. I know it's slower. I know it's stronger, whatever. Like, I can't make Hatterene work, but, Mark was able to get top 8 with it.
That reminds me, you're talking about can't make Hatterene work. And talking about tweets and stuff. Obviously, like, the big thing on Twitter has been like, oh, but the Sneasler, oh, about this, or oh, I hate this Pokemon. James Evans tweeted out, people do too much too much number crunching to reason whether or not you should dislike a Pokemon. Y'all gotta normalize just hating Mons for the love of the game. I have more major waves than Hatterene, and every day I still wake up with fresh hatred for that Pokemon. Like, what? Of all things. So you mentioned Hatterene, and it reminded me of that, because that is crazy.
That's a great tweet. I don't even hate the Hatterene. I just, like, I can't play well with it. I've tried many times to make it work, but that is funny to, like, hate a Pokemon off of vibes, not off of, like, statistical reasoning. And, like, in this essay, I will prove to you why this is unfair. And it's like, nah, just the vibes are off on Sneasler,
Hey, like, there's definitely Pokemon I don't like, and there's just, like, vibes. And then there's Pokemon I hate, and I have really good reasons.
You are not one to hold back your hatred of certain Pokemon. Poor Quaxley getting caught in the strays in the thumbnail. That was crazy.
Like, I feel like that it was the best image to use, and I can casually trash on Quaxley a little, like 2-for-1 special.
Now, what about this Yohan Garcia team with Baxcalibur? Because Baxcalibur was a Pokemon I was trying to make work early on in the regulation. Like, I would put on some Ninetales team, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm in the snow. I got a defense boost. I can click, I can try to boost up or whatever. But this time around, Yohan actually has it on a Dondozo team, a solo Dozo with Yawn, Leftovers, Fissure. Not the silly Dozo nonsense. But like Baxcalibur, hey, if half the Pokemon on the top 12 graphic are going to be dragon types, like, might as well let Baxcalibur join the fray too.
You just snort. You're laughing so hard, like, yeah, just go for it.
No, it was like a kind of cough snort at the same time, but yeah.
Okay. I was looking at the sheet. I thought you just like laughing at yourself.
No.
The backs in general, I don't know. The fact that you have to rely on this loaded dice with these moves is just, you're talking about things that are a little scary going to an event. That one scares me a little bit. Backs in general just kind of scares me for that reason. I do think this Dondozo is particularly annoying. Obviously, if you're not if you're in a bad position, it kind of sucks. But the fact that you kind of have like a get out of jail free button with the Yawn and the Fissure, I think is just really, really funny, because majority of the time you're just going to lose. But I have a soft spot for any Fissure Pokemon because I think it's just funny.
Not that it's good. It's just haha funny to get to lose your run to a Fissure at that point.
Because it's like I haven't had a run destroyed by it, and then also if I'm in the position where my opponent allows me to click fissure 5 turns in a row and I finally hit one, well then maybe you should have killed my Torkoal sooner.
What
Which
I what I do appreciate about this team, especially with the Excalibur, is like, okay, so I'm gonna put loaded dice to mitigate the RNG of having a low roll on the amount of 2 to 5 hits that my Scale Shot or Icicle Spear are going to do, right? Because I care about mitigating risk. And then I'm also going to put Lefty's Dozo with Fissure on the team who is quite literally not mitigating
you got to know
risk.
when to play them and when to hold them. That's all I'm saying. It's all about a balance there, Joe Brown. It's all about balance.
Yeah, it sure is. Another Pokemon I want to talk about in where did my boy finish? Top 10, Frederick Hodge Nielsen with the Hisuian Arcanine and Sierra. Like, you know, back in my day of literally last year, Hisuian Arcanine won 6 regionals and an IC, you know, in a row or whatever it was. And now, like, oh, well, it's fallen off because all the legendaries came around and Raging Bolt and, you know, whatever. And then it's like, well, we're power scaling again. Maybe Hisuian Arcanine comes back. And it's really been non-existent in a format that, like, there's hardly any water types around, so being 4 times weak to water doesn't matter. There's no Palafin messing its day or anything like that. There's no Kyogre or whatever. Like, so do you think Frederick can inspire more people as this format goes on to bring Hisuian Arcanine back? Or like, what's the problem? Why isn't it back at the top tables like it used to be?
I genuinely cannot give you an answer.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Pokemon, but I'm sure there is an answer, and it's going to be something really silly that I'm just overlooking. But just like the offhand is just like, you know, I don't actually know. It has a good speed. It can still intimidate. Like, it's got some pretty good coverage. Couldn't tell ya.
I mean, the only thing I think of is like because Garchomp is good, and at the time when Arcanine was good, Garchomp was not good. And what was that regulation? ABCDE, right? Post Worlds, right? Reg E. So like Garchomp is faster than it and hits it with the 4 times weak Earthquake, so you pretty much always have to terrestrialize out of it. But like, didn't people always terrestrialize out of that bad typing before when it won 6 regionals in a row, right? So like, I feel like that's kind of like par for the course at this point. You just know that Hisuian Arcanine is never actually in its original typing.
Maybe that's it. We just don't want a Terra Hog on the team. We're beyond that. We're past that. I mean, if we're also going into a part of the format where Pokemon are a smidge more bulky, a little slower, have that longevity, having a Pokemon that can be particularly frail, that's kind of like a hit hard once and then you're done with. Like, if the format's already kind of moving away from that, I don't really think there's a place for it to be coming back. Because if you're not necessarily getting like the 1-hit KOs and doing that damage, I think it's just kind of wasting a little bit of a slot that could have a little bit more utility.
Yeah, and I think it won all of those Reg E events, and then technically Nikhil Reddy's Articuno team, that was Reg F, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I hope people try out Hisuian Arcanine, Terra Grass, Terra Normal, Choice Band Extreme Speed, Assault Vest Terra Grass. I think there's multiple ways you can make it work. This team is pretty interesting. The other options Frederick brought with Indeedee Mail, again, this like kind of big star of the event in Europe with Focus Ash, Expanding Force, Protect, Helping Hand, and Trick Room. Talonflame make it go faster. But then Sneasler also with Terra Dark, which is a set I've started to appreciate more, is Terra Dark Throat Chop to deal with Golden Go, and to also be immune to side spam teams. But like, this team is like kind of, it's like super fast and super slow. There's not a lot of middle ground on Frederick's end here, but like, you know, he can either match your speed or match you in Trick Room.
Yeah. Looking at the kind of usage coming out from the event, and so it was kind of like one regional weekend to another. What are your thoughts about this? Because we've had past formats where, you know, Pokemon were over 50%, and that's always been a discussion point. And we now have officially hit the threshold that Sneasler is past that 50%. Second place, out of all things, we got King Gambit at a 39.1.
There is a bit of irony, right? That King Gambit is the second most popular format in a format where the number one Pokemon completely dumpsters King Gambit, right? So kind of it is very interesting how the rock paper scissors of Pokemon can work out sometimes. For example, Rillaboom is the third most popular Pokemon who gets dumpstered by Dire Claw. So like they're just Rillaboom is clearly great against the rest of the field, and then you'd have to reposition against the Sneasler here. But like, remember, Sierra, we're being positive about Sneasler this week. This is a no Sneasler complaint, zone. So I think it's cool that Sneasler's 51% of the meta. I think that's such an awesome metagame development because it's so fun. Every round is unique. You never, like I said, Dire Claw's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get when you click it. So the non-Sneasler conversation here, what do we do? 39 plus 31. That's like 70% Golden Go plus 18% is like 80% for the big three on the steals. I always just try to look at what they are on the map, which I think is lower generally than what we've seen the last couple of events. So maybe people are inspired to run Metagross or run some other steel type that, didn't make the top 12 graphic. But then the Magmar, Sierra, like I think EU is Magmar pilled. Maybe NA likes the Electabuzz because of the tub guys. They made, NA like Electabuzz more, but this is now the second EU regional that I think Magmar was more popular than Electabuzz in.
I told you, over in NA, it's a tub and this Electabuzz. But yeah, it is kind of interesting to see like the back and forth of it. I don't think either's wrong. I think it's depending on the team. What I thought was interesting with the usage is we've been looking at like the 3 dragons in particular, and kind of 4 dragons.
4 with our Chaladon. Yeah. Doesn't actually click any dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. But like our Chaladon leading the charge there on day number 1, and then day number 2, you got that Dragapult going up. So they're still all like very close in each other. Like Dragonite went up a little bit, Garchomp stayed exactly the same, Arch went down.
Yeah, I think that what's tough for me when I try to use Dragapult or Dragonite, and like it doesn't feel like there's as much wiggle room with those Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like you kind of just got to go in and click Terra Dragon Outrage or Terra Dragon Dragon Darts or whatever. Like understanding that like Dragapult is not here for a long time, but it's here for a good time. And like if you can get like 1 in 3/4 KOs with Dragapult before it goes down, like the value it's given to your team is better, even though it's going to get knocked out quickly. So like I feel like those are risky Pokemon. So I always find it impressive that people can use Dragapult and Dragonite specifically compared to like I think Garchomp is a generally well-rounded Pokemon that can be used in a lot of situations, either defensively or offensively. So it feels safer in my head. But like I don't know, I see all these people succeeding with Dragonite, and like it just seems so risky to me every game. Like what if you're the multi-scale version and you get intimidated 6 times, and then what if you're the inner focus version and you get hit by an ice beam? Like it just seems like it's always the set it doesn't want to be to me.
Yeah, I just feel like it doesn't do that much damage either, out of all things.
Without Chien-Pao, yeah.
Yeah, so once it goes back, I'd be intrigued where the other dragons stand with, like, in comparison to Dragonite. But yeah, without the Chien-Pao, I feel like it struggles a little bit.
Now, the one thing I do have to give EU credit on, Sierra, is they've understood the assignment, and they're starting to move on from Fraud Arena. Because if you see, even if its number changed on the graphics, it stayed at roughly 23%, literally 22.9 to 22.8, which is way lower than like the 34% of NA players that used it at Louisville in day 1. And like, I hope we're starting to learn, man. We saw an Azumarill, right? We saw some other options out there. Like, I just don't think Primarina is it.
I don't know if Azumarill is it either. Like,
I don't
not
either.
Gonna lie
I'm just saying.
you, but...
I'm just saying. I want people to try stuff. I want them to try other things. We saw an Avalugg,
Oh my goodness! I still cannot believe the round 8 of day 1 that Boyd gets out-Boyded.
Yeah.
That was the craziest. So anyone who didn't watch the stream, get ready for the two craziest teams. We kind of chatted about it a little bit, but we got Boyd, always known for bringing something a little funky, a little crazy, right? Sinisha, Annihilate, Azumarill, Weavile, Pelipper, Chaladon. Like, okay, that's a little funky. That's a little crazy. It's a little silly. All
That's
right.
a little Boyd, if you will.
It's a little bit, you know, like a standard Boyd. It's like respect. Awesome. Going up against Luigi DeFilippo, who's Flamigo, Archaladon, Alola Ninetales, Avalugg, Crocodile, and Tentacruel. I could not believe when I saw the teams come up on the screen what I was looking at. And, like, it ended up being Boyd to win, make day 2. Congratulations, we love Boyd. But, like, he lost the most original team battle. Like, he lost the one that truly mattered.
Yeah, he won the game but lost the battle. That's crazy.
Dude, at one point, it was the Weavile and the Azumarill out on the field up against the Avalugg and the Flamigo. What?
What I appreciate about that matchup is, like, there's a bunch of Pokemon on there. Like, you can make an argument for adding them as like a 6th mon on the team, right? Like Flamigo has Scrappy, and it can one hit KO Golden Go, where other fighting types can't hit the Golden Go. Okay, that's the thing. And they're like, all right, well, Avalugg is really good defense, and like, I guess you can make an argument that it's a really good defensive wall. There's a lot of physical attackers out there. Plus, you have the ice for Garchomp and all these dragon types. So okay, I can kind of see it. Oh, Tentacruel, well, it's great if half the field is going to have Sneasler. It resists close combat and resist Dire Claw, can't be poisoned. Okay. So, like, these are Pokemon that you can justify maybe making the 6th slot on a team, and then they just made like a whole team of 6 slot Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Crazy. I will not get over that. Like, huge kudos. Humongous kudos. Because that was just fantastic. But
yeah, that Tentacruel is interesting to me. I mean, it's relatively fast. There's hardly any electric in this format besides Archaladon, right? Like, as I said, it resists close combat and Dire Claw. Sludge bombs the Frauderinas if you ever run into them.
Okay, there's the hate. You had to hate on one Pokemon.
Exactly.
One Pokemon gets the hate on for a week. It. But right, for Lille, I don't really have too much else to say about Lille. As I said, I didn't watch, unfortunately. I know. But anything else to discuss before we get into our question of the week?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. It's not Lille related. It's just general Pokemon related. But I had a busy weekend last weekend. One, I went to New York Comic Con. Wanted to tell you about it. But also, while at Comic Con on Friday, I went to Pokemon's Stellar Maze kind of pop up. I don't know, it was like kind of tied to Comic Con, kind of wasn't. This sponsored event, my first sponsored event as a content creator, I got invited to go to. So I wanted to tell you how that went.
Yeah, how'd it go? I saw that it was happening. It looked so cool. People were sharing pictures.
Yeah, so I shared some photos on both Instagram and Twitter at Zemanon for anyone who doesn't follow me there. But it was pretty cool. It was funny. Like, we got there at about like 4:30 for a 5 o'clock event, and there was just like all these dudes in suits and sunglasses, and like they were protecting the assets, and like they're talking in their ears, and like super like dramatic. And I'm like, oh man, what is going on? Like, it was super secretive. Everything was like walled off. You couldn't go in and stuff. And then when you got in, you understood why, because like it was super colorful. For everyone, it was called the Stellar Maze event because I believe they're introducing stellar Pokemon. There we go, Terastalize, whatever. Pokemon to TCG in the new set Surging Sparks. And how it worked out was you walked through this like maze, this stellar maze, as the event was called, which wasn't that long, and also like you just kind of followed the person in front of you because like as soon as one person found the correct turn, like you were no longer lost in the maze because like everyone you had a lot of guinea pigs turn left to find like the dead end and then come back, and then everyone went to the next correct spot. But on the other side was these really cool, like larger than life, big pictures with big lights surrounding them of a lot of the new EX Pokemon in the next set, and like it was pretty cool overall. Like I knew a couple of people. I knew our friend Boo, the TCG caster, a couple of other friends as well from the VGC scene. So I was excited to know some VG people there, but it was pretty cool. I felt very fortunate to be able to go.
Man, the pictures look so cool. I hope they do more things like that for like more set releases, because I think that obviously Comic-Con isn't all the time, but like for any type of like big gaming convention, like I don't know, that's such a cool vibe. Like I love that. So more of that.
Yeah, it was cool. And like you could even take like photos in front of like different spots, and like they had like free food and free drinks, and there was a lot of people there. It was it was funny because like as you're going in, they're like, oh, okay, are you content creator? Are you press? Are you blah blah? And like I'm just sitting there like thinking it's funny because I was fortunate enough to get my brother a ticket to go with me, and like we're there in like Pokemon gear, and it's like, oh, are you press? And it's like, you know, like, well, if I was like an independent journalist covering this event, I feel like I wouldn't be, you know, dripped head to toe in Pokemon gear, you know.
Yeah. How was the rest of Comic-Con, by the way? Because you're saying like that was a part of it. Like, how was it? I've never been.
Oh, you gotta go. I've been going to New York Comic Con since 2010 or 2011. I can't remember which was my first actual year that I went. So I go with my brother and some of our friends. You know, the number of days changes every year. This day we only went on Friday and Saturday. But sometimes you go all 4 days. Sometimes you only have time for one. You know. And it's a really fun event. I think you got to go in with a game plan, because if you don't, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's like, oh, here's this in this hall, they're introducing this event, and oh, here are these actors, you can go meet these celebrities and get their autograph and take a photo, or you can go to Artist Alley and see what all these comic book artists have to offer, and blah blah blah. Like, so it's overwhelming if you don't have a plan going in. But we knew since we only had 2 days, we were going to tackle certain things on each day. And I love just like kind of zigzagging through all the aisles and seeing what all the different booths have to offer. You know what I mean? So like we played like there was like there was like a new Monster Hunter game. So like we went over to that section to see, like they're promoting that. We actually did the demo for the Union Arena trading card game, which is another Bandai card game that just came out. So like we did to get a free Luffy promo for the One Piece game, but you know. And like I bought a lot of stuff. We went to 2 panels. One of them was for Fairy Tail, one of my favorite anime. The creator was there and like asked questions. I didn't ask a question. I'm too scared to ask a question. People asked questions in the crowd to him about Fairy Tail. And we went to a Bleach event as well, as a new season of Bleach is coming. And like overall, it's a good vibe. I think it's, as I said, it's overwhelming, but I think it's definitely something you gotta do, Sierra. You gotta come down to CR maybe next year.
Maybe next year if I'm around the area for that time. Sounds like a good time. So I'm glad it was fun. Yeah, I've only gone to like the events that they have sometimes out in Toronto. I did go to E3 once, which was cool. But I was working, so it wasn't as fun. But yeah.
I'm trying to think. I did meet while I was at the Bleach event. I don't want to just derail everything, but I met the voice actress for Rukia, she's one of the characters in Bleach, for those who don't know. And I wish I brought it upstairs. It's downstairs. I'm so dumb. I should have brought it up. I got her to sign a Funko Pop, and it's got like a personalized signature of like a quote from her character, like one of the quotes she says in the show, and then like she drew like a bunny on the side of it and stuff. Like it was like a really cool Like, she was a super nice lady. I was wearing my Squirtle shirt from Honolulu, and like she talked about Pokemon and like the World Championships and stuff. Like, it was a really cool moment.
Oh, that's
And
so cool. Let's go.
The funniest part though was like, this is super nerdy, but like when she just talked like a human being, I know, I was just like, all right, it's just a lady. But like, she laughed at some point, and she laughed just like how Rukia laughs in Bleach, and then I was like, oh, I hear it. That's Rukia
I hear
talking
it.
to.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I
that was
hear
cool.
it. That's really funny. It reminds me of like people that like do voice acting and hear like they'll like Twitch stream or do something, and like there's like little clips of like people hearing like who like they voice acted at coming out in game, and they're like, oh my god, wait a second. Like, I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah. So overall, maybe next year we'll get you to go. We'll see what happens. But
1 year.
Yeah, I think besides that, I'd say we had a successful episode. I'd say we closed it out with a strong question of the week. What do you say?
I'm here for it. All right. Question of the week. What we got?
All right. So I'm actually going to go, like, I think there was a simpler question, but I'm going to go with Flame G's question before, which the simple question was about like merch and stuff. I give Magi credit, but like, I don't know, I'm not a merch guy. So I'm going to go with I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but this question of the week, and for anyone who wants to ask us a question at the end of every podcast, make sure you join us in the Discord. Give us that opportunity to answer your question of the week. Flame G asks, would VGC benefit from an ELO system based purely on in-person events? I wouldn't even want to use it to see things. Really, all I'd want to do is give a very loose idea of matchups. There are a lot of good players to track. Some of them I don't recognize or haven't seen, but a little 1800 in the corner could say, yeah, this is a great player, or this player has a bunch of achievements, but their ELO this season's pretty low and they've been struggling, right? So, et cetera, et cetera. The question to you, Sierra, would VGC benefit from an ELO-based system compared to what we have now?
I don't know if like how much of a benefit there would be on a grander scale of things. Like just thinking about it, I don't think that there's anything that's too, oh my god, like that there's a benefit for. I do think having a number that is just like a fun talking point about the players, I think could be fun on a broadcast aspect of things. But I think when you're looking at the same type of system that we have currently, which is a random Swiss, Arcanine, and everything else, and already in like an RNG based system that there's so many luck type variables that I don't think it would always be as reflective as maybe it could be in comparison to something like a chess ELO or something. Like it would still be cool. And there is a website that does give an ELO base for the players that is like third party ran. But I don't think that there would be really too much benefit beyond just like a cool thing. It's like the website where it tells you like who's been like the most successful player with each Pokemon. It's like a kind of really cool thing, but I don't think there's a grand benefit offhand.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in your boat for the most part, because the way I think of it, like, sure, I'm no chess master or whatever, right? So I don't know all this stuff, but I have watched the Queen's Gambit, okay? So I know a thing or two about chess. And like, I don't know when they made chess, but let's say it's been around for 500 years. Like, the pieces have been doing what they've been doing for 500 years, right? So it's like in Pokemon, the Pokemon change every generation. The Pokemon change every regulation, really. Every couple of months, a player that might be good at Regulation B might be dog water in Regulation C, right? But the pieces in chess, that ELO system works because that top player that's been playing since he was 13 years old is still playing the same game of chess now that he's 30 years old. And like, that's what would concern me if we started using an ELO-based system, is like, one, it'd also be a nightmare. I know we have the unofficial version of it tracking it, but you're only using the official events, which is not the full story, right? Because other ELOs we have, whether it be Showdown, you have an ELO, right? Of I'm 1700s in Showdown with this team, or if you play League of Legends, I'm in Grandmaster or blah blah blah. Like I'm top at Valorant, or like I'm Diamond in Street Fighter 6. Like those are in-game official ways of ranking players, which we don't really have in Pokemon because the Battle Stadium ladder is just like it's so drastically different than the in-person experience that like being the number 3 ranked player on Battle Stadium is not the same as being the 3rd best Chun-Li in North America in Street Fighter. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't equal the same skill set to me. So like I don't think it would help. I understand where Flame G is saying it would help with unfamiliar players, because if players who don't have, when we put their graphic up, top 4 this regional, top 8 this regional, top 16 at an IC, like if they don't have those accomplishments yet, but they've been going 6-2 consistently, it would help those middle of the road players. But I don't think implementing a whole system just to make you feel more comfortable that you're now more aware of a middle of the road player is necessarily like going to improve, any aspects.
I think this was brought up in the Discord as well, but there's the possibility of it possibly being like toxic. I do think that overall we do have a pretty good community. But even just like thinking of other games, like people can get toxic about a more official ELO system. And the ranked battle is like a fun, like, oh, I've hit this, but like beyond that, like, all right, so what? Whereas I would worry that first off, that people might get a little like, oh, well, I lost to this person and they're this ELO, like I shouldn't have, and it could bring out a toxic side. But even then, I think it could also, like, you don't need to know the accomplishments of the person you're sitting across from. Like, it's one of those things that it's great to kind of know the community and everything, but at the same time, I don't think that helps nerves to know you're sitting across from someone that has an ELO way better than you. I don't think it's going to help you feel better if you lose to someone who has an ELO that's worse than you. If you're curious, you can look it up after the match. And like from a broadcast storytelling perspective, I think we should be able to reiterate how good or like how unknown of a quantity a player is without having to use a system like that. Like I think it's fine where it's at, which is hey, there is this website, and if you're ever curious, it's kind of cool. I looked myself up on there. My ELO ain't great. I don't compete at too many events. And it's a cool thing, but I don't think that it should hold any more weight than that itself.
Yeah, and then so one of the toxicity is a great point. I think that there is the potential for it to get really bad. Then you also would have like, it's not like ELO match fixing, but it's like ELO protection services of like people would drop before they should drop to protect their ELO. And like if the intention is like to accumulate as much championship points as you can, so like, to qualify for top 75 in North America, right? Well, once I get that 3rd, if I'm a player and I get my 3rd loss of the day, then I'm just going to drop because I can't take day 2 anymore. But in theory, it is in my best interest to continue to play to try to earn those championship points. So like it's like creating the ELO system would be antithetical to what Pokemon wants you to do, is they want you to play out all of your rounds of Switch, where people are intentionally going to drop to preserve their ELO because they don't want to risk it. Who knows, it might force people to not use creative teams because they want to preserve their ELO. They don't want to lose it if they try to use an Executor or something like that. Yeah, I think it's a neat idea, but just to me, it's not like, I don't know if it necessarily benefits the scene or the broadcast or the players enough to be implemented officially.
Yeah, like if we were to ever go into a system where things were more ELO based, so let's say online events, and I don't think that this system should exist personally, and at least it would need to be heavily workshopped, but let's say for qualifying for a certain type of major, you need to have a certain ELO on this ranked ladder, a certain thing. Like if there was reasons to like that were incorporated within the circuit to care about the ELO, it'd be different, but like it definitely goes against kind of what's been built up with the tournaments right now for that ELO thing to even just like exist on like a more official level.
Yeah, so.
But I also just hate change, so.
Yeah, don't knock it till you try. Don't knock the ELO system till you try. But I think, yeah, we're on the same point here. We think it's an interesting idea, but we don't think it would be that beneficial for the scene overall. But,
But like, go and look yourself, if you're ever curious, look yourself up on the website. It is posted in the
I'd
Discord.
just be super depressed.
And, like,
yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It'll even show like who your like biggest upset was and like what the elo difference was. Like,
really, that's pretty cool. Actually,
it is cool on an unofficial level to see all this stuff. But
how far does it track back? Do you know, like 2018 or something, or like how far does it go back?
I am not 100% sure. Like, it's kind of cool. Like, so it'll tell you the rank within your region.
Okay.
And your elo, your best elo, your GXE, your win rate in general. It'll also tell you like out of your regionals, like how many day twos, your top cuts, international, world, and then you're like your win loss in general. So like I don't know necessarily how far it goes back, but for example, I'm looking at Luca Scarabelli, and biggest upset was round 12 versus Chupa Cross at the 2023 UIC.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Or
like, on an unofficial level, I think the stuff is massively cool. Like,
as I like to call them, Couple Cross. Did you see that tweet?
I did see that. That was a good one.
Cross.
That was a really good one.
Oh, that's a great tweet.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. On that note, I say we close out this episode. Thank you to Slitherwing for making an appearance on the podcast this week. Probably the 500th Slitherwing reference that we've had. You have anything else before we close it out, Sierra?
If anyone was curious, I am ranked 163 in Canada.
And rising. Okay, we're gonna
rising.
Those are baby numbers. We gotta pump those numbers up, Sierra.
I don't know when I'm competing at the next regional. I don't know what regional I'm competing at, so I don't know. No, I don't know.
We got time. We'll get you to rank 1 at some point. But thank you for everybody who watched along this episode. Thank you to Andrew for the first half, our Louisville Regional Champion, coming on and letting us talk to him for a bit about his run. Anybody, if this is your first time watching the OHKO podcast, make sure you like and subscribe. Get those notifications for when our episodes go up every single week. Fingers crossed Thursdays at noon Eastern, but sometimes it be like that. Anyway, join our Discord that's linked in the description. We have the question of the week, join our OHKO team, trying to make a superior team work, and a lot of other fun things going on in there. I think as of this episode, we'll be very close to 365 memes, day memes. So I think a lot of people have to be very ready for that day to come. But for now, we're going to close it out. Thank you so much for watching the OHKO podcast. We will see you next week.